I'll proceed for the next keynote speaker, Dr. Shalini Yohan. She is MD Obstetric Gynec and Consultant Gynecologist at DCH Hisar. Dr. Shalini. Consultant Gynecologist DCH Hisar. Dr. Manisha. She is a Consultant Gynecologist and Dr. Pallavi Anesthetist at DCH Hisar. Dr. Shalini will be presenting a talk on gestational diabetes. Please, chairpersons, you may please take your seats. Dr. Shalini.
Worldwide, the incidence of diabetes in pregnancy is 1 to 14%. In India, it is around 4.5 to 18.9%. Now, more than 50% of these GDL patients will develop type 2 diabetes in the coming 5 to 10 years. Describing hyperglycemia in pregnancy, it can be classified into diabetes in pregnancy or pre-gestational diabetes, which can be diagnosed before the start of pregnancy or for the first time during pregnancy, both type 1 and type 2. Next is gestational diabetes mellitus. When hyperglycemia is detected in a previously euglycemic female during routine testing in pregnancy, generally between 24 to 28 weeks, mainly due to insulin resistance, we call it as gestational diabetes mellitus. Pregnancy is itself a diabetogenic state. Now, to supply glucose to the fetus, mother develops fasting hypoglycemia, and because of the insulin resistance which develops in pregnancy, there occurs postprandial hyperglycemia. As a result of secreting hormones from the placenta, human placental lactogen, cortisol, estrogen and progesterone, there develops insulin resistance. Now the following graph shows that the dotted line is depicting usual amount of the insulin that is produced during pregnancy, while the bold line shows that there is a shortage of insulin after 24 weeks of gestation. Preconception counseling in pre-gestational diabetes patients is of utmost importance. We should lay an impact on the following points. That is the impact of diabetes on pregnancy, pregnancy on diabetes, how diabetes affects the fetus, and we should also lay an emphasis on the glycemic control before the patient conceives. This counseling should be done at least 3 to 6 months before conception. We usually educate the patient about the development or progression of pre-existing complication of the diabetes. We describe about diabetic retinopathy, nephropathy and neuropathy. There is a need of adjustment of the dosage medications and shifting the patient from oral hypoglycemic agents to insulin. We also advise folic acid supplementation. Hypoglycemic symptoms should be explained in the preconception period also. We lay the emphasis on nausea and vomiting in pregnancy. It can affect the blood glucose control, and also counsel about the effective contraception guidance before planning pregnancy. Now, in pre-gestational diabetes patient, there is a risk of congenital malformation that also we explained. We counsel the patient that there are increased number of antenatal visits will be given for monitoring of the glucose, for exaggeration, and also there will be exaggeration of the pre-existing complications like diabetic nephropathy, retinopathy, and there will be increase in the dosage and the frequency of the insulin. We educate the patient about the risk of spontaneous abortion in early pregnancy, the risk of developing preeclampsia, preterm labor, gestational hypertension, as well as macrosomia, that is estimated fetal weight more than 4 kgs, risk of polyhydramnios. Also in the antenatal period, the patient will have high risk of developing UTIs and vulvovaginitis. During labor, diabetes in pregnancy increases the risk of prolongation of labor. There are high chances of operative interference. That is, there is increase in the cesarean section rates in the diabetes group. There is increase in the chance of shoulder dystocia, the incidence being 4.9 to 23%, which takes a toll on both the mother and the fetus. The most common injury that we encounter in the babies is brachial plexus injury. During the puerperal period also, there is high chance of P sepsis and lactation failure. Long-term effects, that is impaired glucose tolerance, development of metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular diseases, type 2 diabetes, and development of GDM in the subsequent pregnancies are also We educate the patient about fetal as well as neonatal complications that can occur, development of large for gestational age, that is more than 90th centile, development of congenital malformations, mostly cardiovascular malformations develop, and there is 3 to 4 times increased risk of developing stillbirths in these pregnancies. Also in the neonates, we give special attention as there is high chances of developing hypoglycemia, hypocalcemia, hypermagnesemia. There is increased risk of developing prematurity because of the polyhydramnios. Also, there is risk of developing hyperviscosity syndrome. We lay special emphasis in the pre-gestational diabetes patient about the glycemic control. We counsel that the preprandial blood sugar level should be less than 95, 1 hour postprandial is less than 140, and 2 hour postprandial is less than 120. Also, the HbA1c value should be less than 6% before conception, although we are happy with 6.5% as well. Now, this shows that the value of HbA1c directly correlates with the risk of congenital malformations. With less than 6% HbA1c, there is the risk of congenital malformation almost 2.8%, and it keeps on increasing as the value of HbA1c increases. Now, talking few words on the screening. There are basically 2 modalities of screening, that is selective screening and universal screening. In selective screening, we screen only high-risk population, that is women with high BMI, age more than 40 years, history of macrosomic baby previously, previous history of stillbirth or congenital malformation, previous history of gestational diabetes mellitus in earlier pregnancies, and also in the high-risk ethnic groups. Universal screening is followed in India. DIPSI lays down its guideline that the women should be screened at the first visit itself, and also during the 24 to 28 weeks gestation, we catch the remaining patients. We usually follow a one-step approach for screening the patients. That is, we give 75 gram glucose at around 24 to 20 weeks of gestation in around 300 ml of water. We mix it and we ask the patient to take in around 5 minutes. The cutoff values are around after 1 hour it should be more, if it is more than 180, and after 2 hours if it is more than 153. Even if one of the value is deranged, we label the patient as gestational diabetes mellitus. Anytime during the screening, if the fasting plasma glucose comes out to be more than 126 and the 2 hour plasma glucose, if it comes out to be more than 200, we label the patient as overt diabetes. So, DIPSI lays down the guidelines to follow a universal screening method, that is a one-step approach. It is more convenient and economical. We use it irrespective of the fasting status. There is no need to come for follow-up, and more than 140 value is taken in the DIPSI criteria, where between 140 to 200 we label the patient as GDF, and if it comes to more than 200, we suspect that the patient might be having pre-gestational diabetes as well. What special points are to be focused in antenatal care? In the pre-gestational diabetes as well as in the gestational diabetes, we ask the patient to get an anomaly scan done at around 18 to 20 weeks, which is similar to all the pregnant females. Then we also lay an emphasis on the aneuploidy screening at around 11 to 13 weeks in the patients of pre-gestational diabetes, as the risk of congenital malformations is increased. We ask for a fetal echo at around 22 weeks because there is risk of cardiovascular congenital malformations. Then we go for 2 growth scans at least at 28 to 30 weeks and 34 to 36 weeks, which should be at a minimum gap of 3 weeks. Now at each growth scan, we do a fetal biometry and amniotic fluid estimation, as there is high risk of polyhydramnios. At each visit in the gestational diabetes as well as the pre-gestational diabetes patient, we check for the blood pressure as there is high risk of developing hypertension in these patients. We look for proteinuria, polyhydramnios as well, and we assess the fetal growth. We go for urine routine microscopy in each trimester as there is high risk of developing UTI, vulvovaginitis and asymptomatic bacteriuria. We start the fetal monitoring from 32 weeks as there is increased risk of fetal death in the form, we do the fetal monitoring in the form of daily fetal movement count, a non-stress test and biophysical profile. We go for a Doppler ultrasound in case we suspect pregnancy-induced hypertension or FGR. For management of such patients, we keep the target blood sugar level of fasting less than 95, 1 hour postprandial less than 140, 2 hour less than 120, 3 AM glucose of more than 60, and we also counsel the patient about the hypoglycemia that might develop. We usually follow a 4-pronged approach, laying emphasis on the exercise that is recommended in pregnancy of at least 30 minutes per day, moderate intensity, at least 5 days a week. Therefore, minimum 150 minutes per week should be given in the form of walking, jogging, running, aerobic or dance exercises. So, brisk walking or arm exercises can also be advised while the patient is seated in the chair for 10 minutes after each meal. If the patient is physically active prior to the pregnancy, then we advise the patient to continue the previous exercise routine. Of utmost importance is the medical nutritional therapy, that is a carbohydrate controlled meal plan. The goal of MNT is to provide adequate nutrient intake for both the mother and the fetus for achieving and maintaining normoglycemia in the pregnant baby. We provide adequate nutrition to achieve appropriate gestational weight gain and appropriate food, physical activity and behavioral education is given. As per the BMI of the patient, we calculate the calories that is required. Now these total calories are divided into 40% to carbohydrates, 40% to fats and 20% to proteins. We try keeping saturated fat levels to less than 10% and cholesterol less than 300 milligram per day. We try incorporating complex carbohydrates with a low glycemic index in the female. We advise her to take 3 small to moderate size meals and 2 to 4 snacks in between. Out of the total calorie distribution, we usually give 10 to 20% to the breakfast, 20 to 30% to lunch and 30 to 40% to the dinner. For snack time, we keep a total of around 30%. We also note that the breakfast should contain the smallest amount of carbohydrates as there is high resistance to the insulin in early morning hours. After starting the medical nutritional therapy, we ask the patient to follow it for a minimum of 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, we do a 2-hour postprandial glucose value. If it comes out to be less than 120, then we monitor these 2-hour postprandial values up to 28 weeks, once in 2 weeks, and after 28 weeks, we check it once a week. If the value comes out to be more than 120, we go on starting the insulin therapy. Now, where comes the role of metformin? We are usually giving metformin to the patients, but it is not the first line agent or the drug of choice in the diabetes in pregnancy. It is given only when the patient refuses to take the insulin, and it has no role in the patient of pre-gestational diabetes. It is an oral bivalent, as we all know. The dosage we start is 500 milligram once a day, and we can go up to maximum of 3 grams. It is associated with a very low incidence of lactic acidosis, and in mother, she can have side effects related to gastrointestinal system. There is also the risk of developing neonatal hypoglycemia. However, it should be used in the women with preeclampsia, or it should not be used in the women with preeclampsia or a high risk of FGR, as it can lead to the same. Insulin is the drug of choice in diabetes in pregnancy. Now, what are the indications of starting insulin? In GDM patients, if after 2 weeks of medical nutritional therapy, the 2-hour postprandial value, if it comes out to be more than 120. Second, pre-gestational diabetes patients, Basically, we divide it into two types of insulin. The basal insulin suppresses the hepatic glucose production and maintains the near normal glycemia in the fasting state. We use usually NPH in prandial or the pre-meal insulin, which covers the extra requirements after food is absorbed and decrease the post-prandial glucose excursions. Short-acting insulin, that is the regular insulin, is usually used. We use premix insulin, although it is not ideal since it compromises the flexibility, but it is more convenient to the patient and may improve the compliance. It is an FDA category B drug. Considered as safe and effective treatment, that is regular insulin, NPH, Lispro, Aspart and Detamil. The rapid-acting insulin analogs, that is Aspart and Lispro, do not show an adverse effect on the pregnancy or the health of the baby. We use NPH insulin as the first choice for long-acting insulin during pregnancy. We usually titrate the dose of insulin in GDM. If the fasting hyperglycemia comes out to be more than 95, the basal insulin at the bedtime, that is NPH, we calculate the dose as around 0.1 to 0.2 units per kg per day, and we start with the lower dose and we go on increasing it gradually. If the preprandial values are raised, we add a morning NPH. If both the fasting as well as the postprandial hyperglycemia is seen, we add 3 mealtime insulin with the basal insulin. In GDM, the requirement of insulin is half that of the pre-gestational diabetes. At discharge, total dose may be calculated and converted into 2 premix insulin, that is 30:70 injections, with 2/3 given in the morning and 1/3 is given at the night. Insulin therapy is highly individualized. We deliver the 2/3 value in the morning, 1/3 in the night. The morning dose is divided into 2/3 of NPH and 1/3 of the regular insulin. In the evening dose, we give half and half. So, according to the blood sugar level, we select if the blood sugar is between 120 to 160, we start with the 4 units of insulin. If it is more than 200, we directly start with the 8 units of insulin. We also counsel the patient about the hypoglycemic episodes that might occur. The factors responsible are if she exercises or if she does not take the insulin properly or inadequate food intake. The symptoms can be weakness, dizziness, confusion, headache, hunger, sweating, tremors and visual disturbances. We ask the patient to take a quick acting carbohydrates if the need arises, followed by the longer acting carbohydrates. If the patient is in the hospital setting, we give IV administration of 50 to 100 ml of 25% glucose and repeat if needed. Patient and her relatives should be taught to recognize the symptoms of hypoglycemia. When to terminate these patients? In pre-gestational diabetes, where there is no vascular complications and the blood sugar levels are well controlled, we go up to 37 to 39 weeks. If there are vascular complications or the blood sugars are poorly controlled, we can consider terminating at less than 37 weeks as well. While in the patients of gestational diabetes mellitus, who are well controlled only on diet and exercise, we go up to 40 to 41 weeks. Mode of termination is usually decided as per the obstetric indication. While in the case of fetal macrosomia, that is weight more than 4 kg, we go for an elective cesarean. Metformin is the reasonable second line choice, who will be unable to safely administer the insulin and fasting less than MAT26. Both NPH as well as Detamil are recommended as basal insulin in GDM. Any of the insulin, regular, Lispro or Aspart, can be used for the management of postprandial glucose. Also in these patients, pre-gestational diabetes patients, we give low-dose aspirin in the dose of 75 to 150 mg. Women with a history of GDM are at an increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes in the later life. So we order an OGTT test for them at around 6 to 12 weeks postpartum and every 1 to 3 years. Thank you.
gynecologist. Now she is working in the private sector. Thank you, Dr. Manisha Hisar.